Hello, everyone. So he's driving the whole chess world crazy, this young 14-year-old Turkish player, Erdogmus. He's currently breaking every record. His latest record? Being the youngest player in chess history to have crossed the legendary 2,700 ELO point mark. Very few chess players in the world have managed to reach this point ranking. And now Erdogmus is playing in a tournament alongside Magnus Carlsen. In fact, these two players will soon face each other. Yesterday, I showed you Magnus Carlsen's victory. Well, if you want to see it again, you can click on the link above. And today, I'm going to show you this game by Erdogmus. He's playing black. His opponent starts with the move knight to f3. It's a young Chinese player named Zhu Jiner. She's the fourth best woman in the world. And so she plays knight f3. And already we're getting some initial information in the game. Both players will fight for control of the e5 square. And for now, white plays knight f3 and controls this square. But watch closely what happens next. Erdogmus plays d5, pawn to e3, knight to f6, and b3. And here, the Chinese player wants to strengthen her control of the e5 square by placing her bishop on b2 on the longest dark diagonal of the board. The bishop can join the knight to closely monitor this e5 square and prevent black from advancing in the center. But nevertheless, Erdogmus will do everything to contest this square. And he starts immediately with bishop g4. He pins the knight on f3, which can't help control the e5 square, but bishop b2. And now look closely. He's not going to develop his knight to c6. No, he's going to play knight d7. Because if he had played knight to c6, then the light-squared bishop can also come and pin the black knight, which won't be able to fight for the e5 square. And that's why Erdogmus prefers knight d7. A move, certainly more subtle for the knight, but one that protects him from the pin, because after bishop b5 now, he can play c6, break the pin, and push the bishop back. And that's why the Chinese player chooses the move bishop e2. c6 is played, d3, e6, h3. Question the bishop, but Erdogmus doesn't exchange for now. He retreats to h5. Knight to d2, pawn to h6, c4. White is trying to deflect the black pawn away from the center with this proposed exchange of a central pawn for a flank pawn. But the black pieces are not letting themselves be distracted from their development plan. And Erdogmus plays bishop d6. And now he has two pieces to contest this central square on e5. And soon he'll be able to place his pawn and develop in the center, gain space, and advance in the central area of the board. Knight d4 is played, proposing an exchange of the bishops of light squares. Erdogmus isn't exchanging anything for now. He retreats to g6. g4 is played. Now that is an aggressive move, though. Here, the Chinese player, by playing g4, what is she saying? She's saying that she won't be kingside castling. Maybe the white king will stay in the center. He'll probably end up joining the other side by queenside castling. And this move g4 prepares an attack against a black kingside castling. If black does kingside castling, then the pawn g, certainly supported by the rook in g1, could go strike the castled king and try to open the g-file. It's quite scary, but it doesn't scare the young player too much, who is going to kingside castle. I would have thought twice before kingside castling in this position for sure. And here rook g1 arrives, but e5? Erdogmus's idea is to conquer the central space, push back the white pieces, and prevent the white pieces from being able to maneuver and approach his castled king. So knight f5 is played, and here, look closely. He captures the knight. True, the pawn takes back, opening the g-file for the rook. But who can join the rook in the attack on the king? For now, there aren't really any other white pieces capable of quickly approaching the black king to attack it. And here, there is another exchange that is very important and that inexperienced players will certainly not really pay attention to. Yet, this exchange is essential for the strategic understanding of the rest of the game. Too much. He has just exchanged his light-squared bishop for a knight. And so he leaves the Chinese player in possession of the only light-squared bishop. But we'll see that Erdogmus will do everything to hinder the play of this white square bishop, which in reality will never manage to play in the game. But in compensation for the light squared bishop, Erdogmus, what does he have? He has one more piece to fight on the dark squares. Because in terms of minor pieces, he has three minor pieces capable of fighting on the dark squares. The opponent's light squared bishop cannot. And so he will benefit from one more piece to do battle on these dark squares. And he'll do it very well. Let's look at the rest of the game. Queen to e7. Already the rooks are connected. The queen joins the bishop. Why not to enter on a 3? To exchange for white's dark squared bishop, breaking the opponent's bishops, finally removing white's most active bishop. But here, the Chinese player refuses. She plays a 3. A 5 is played, prevents b4. Queen c2, rook f to e8, bishop on f3 and knight c5. This knight c5 move is very threatening. The idea is to support the push to f4. In case of a capture, to certainly be able to take back with a pawn, push back the bishop and annex the d3 square for the arrival of a knight on d3 with check. And the Chinese player doesn't really want the center to open since for now the white king is fine where he is. And so she's going to play e4 herself. But by playing e4, ultimately she smothers her light squared bishop. And the push of the pawn from e3 to a4 will weaken two dark squares, the f4 square and the d4 square. Look closely, these are squares that Erdogmus will play on later in the game. Dark squares, don't forget that he has an extra piece to play on dark squares. He has 2 knights against only 1, plus the dark square's bishop. So he has 3 minor pieces against 2. If minor pieces defending the dark squares are exchanged, it'll go from 3 against 2 to 2 against 1, then to 1 against nothing. Whatever happens, Erdogmus will end up placing a black piece on these squares f4 and d4. For now, he takes on e4. Recapture, the rook comes to d8. Now, this is a bit fun because by coming to d8, the rook will prepare the knight's arrival on d3 with check. For example, if white played b4, I'll just show you an amusing variation. We could exchange and play knight d3 check anyway. Even if the queen takes, since it draws the queen into the rook's line of fire, and we could then do bishop takes b4, winning this pawn, attacking the queen and winning back the piece by taking the knight on d2 with check, opening up the position against the white king. You see now why white chooses to retreat bishop to e2 to keep an eye on that d3 square. King to h7, rook g3. And here Erdogmus plays a move that surprised me. I didn't understand it. Later I ended up understanding it, of course. He played g6. I didn't understand why he wanted to play this move g6. Do you understand it? I'll give you a few moments to try and think about Erdogmus's strategic intentions. So why did Erdogmus play this move g6? In reality, he wants to deflect the f5 pawn. He really wants the white pawn to take, which didn't happen in the game. But he really wants that. Why? Because deflecting the f5 pawn, or even removing it here, will give the e6 square to the knight. And the knight, by coming to e6, can then look to establish itself on the f4 and d4 squares, those dark squares we mentioned earlier. And that's why after g6, white definitely doesn't take. Knight d7 is played. It also frees up the dark square bishop and the queen to attack the pawn on a 3. So white can't even do queenside castling without losing this pawn on a3. And if the pawn advances to a 4, it'll give the b4 square to the bishop, then the c5 square to the knight. It'll give away all the black squares in the position. And so white plays knight to f1. We'll see that the knight then wants to jump to e3. Knight h5, the knight is looking for the f4 square. Knight e3, knight comes to f4. The bishop retreats to f1. Knight f6. And this position is critical. Because here, the Chinese player is going to advance her pawn to c5 and give up this pawn. And to understand this pawn push to c5, one must first understand black's threat, which is diabolical, but truly diabolical. I hadn't seen it either, but the analysis made me understand. Let's take a look. What is Erdogmus threatening? A hidden threat, but truly magnificent. He's actually threatening to take the pawn on e4. You'll tell me, but the queen will take back. For example, let's imagine it's black's turn. We must understand the threat. Knight takes e4, queen takes e4. But look at the white king. He has no square. The knight controls the e2 square. And the rook could control all the king's escape squares. So Erdogmus's idea is then to play bishop b4 check, sacrificing the bishop after sacrificing the knight, to play queen takes b4 check, and mate will follow. The king can't go to e2 or d1 because of the knight and the rook, so white can block with the bishop, but queen takes bishop is checkmate. So here is Erdogmus's threat. Take the pawn on e4, then play bishop b4 check. So what will white play? They're going to play c5. They sacrifice this pawn to gain the c4 square. Bishop takes c5 and knight c4. And now the sequence knight takes e4 and bishop b4 no longer works. Why? Because the white knight is no longer on e3. And that frees up the third rank to control the c3 square and block the queen's arrival. For example, if Erdogmus still wants to play his sequence, knight takes f4, queen takes f4, bishop b4 check, white can trade, and now the bishop or the rook can move to c3 without the queen being able to take. And so there's no mating attack at all. So while Erdogmus can't carry out his attack, he has won a good pawn. And now he's going to play bishop b4. He's going to trade off this bishop of black squares. Queenside castling, bishop takes b2, king takes b2, rook takes d1, queen takes d1. So after several piece exchanges, Erdogmus is still a pawn up, but don't forget there's also still that color superiority for playing on the dark squares. And for now, he takes on f5. Recapture. The knight comes to d5, 2 knights against 1, you'll have to be very careful of forks. You know, knights are approaching. And even 2 knights, that multiplies the fork possibilities. Rook g3 is played. Queen f6, the black queen faces the king. So white moves aside, king a2. b5 is played, attacking the knight. And here the player is going to make a blunder. But well, she's already losing the game. And you have to understand that the players don't have much time left. She has less than a minute on the clock. Keep in mind, this was a long game, one where both players had over an hour and 30 minutes at the start. And if they reach the 40th move, they even get more time added. But here we're only at move 34, so they have very little time. She must have about 50 seconds left. And Erdogmus, if I remember correctly, has a few minutes on the clock. And so this move b5 is going to lead to disaster. Because Erdogmus has been looking for the fork on c3 for a while now, the royal fork king-queen, but the rook controls that square. But when Erdogmus plays b5, well, he hopes the white knight will move to e3. And that's exactly what happens. She plays knight e3 to try and trade a knight, but in doing so, she blocks the rook's defense of the c3 square. She realizes it and resigns immediately. Because obviously after knight c3, it's a royal fork and the queen is lost. So what could she have played? She could have moved her knight elsewhere, to d2 or b2, to which Erdogmus could have played to support the knight c3 threat. He can't play it right away, there's the rook. But maybe he can play e4 to free the queen and threaten knight c3, or maybe push it to b4 so that the knight can land on c3. In any case, this position is winning for Erdogmus. You'll tell me he's only up a pawn. No, sure, it's true, he's only up a pawn, but he has a complete grip on the position. The white king is very weak. The black pieces are much more aggressive, and there's this square c3 that's a problem. After e4 or b4, the knight will eventually sit on c3, without the bishop of the white squares being able to play anyway. In the hands of a grandmaster, this kind of advantage is already totally decisive. But you see that fork errors can happen even at a high level when under time pressure, because the player with Les Blancs is over 2500 ELO. And so in round 3 of this tournament, we see that there are several players with 2 points. Carlsen, Abdusattorov, Erigaisi, Erdogmus, and Woodward. Your prediction, I saw in the last video that many of you were rooting for Carlsen. But I'm looking forward to, and I think you are too, the matchup between Carlsen and Erdogmus. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up. You don't do it often enough, do you? Leave comments, share the video, and support the channel. The community needs to boost my videos to simply help me out. Goodbye, everyone.